Perhaps we've all thought or dreamed of building a wonderful exhibition layout, but sadly, as most of us are probably incapable of doing so, we just dream on when we go to model railway shows. But this layout has come my way, and I must confess the quality is absolutely staggering. So let me show you just how good it really is. Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie. A little bit different this week, and it's all to do with this lovely little layout behind me. It was owned by a gentleman by the name of Dave, who a couple of years ago sadly died. He was a member of our club down at West Camel. His widow asked me to sell on the rolling stock, and some of the club members bought it, and some of the other stuff I naturally sold on eBay, and we moved it all on. But she's in the situation now where this layout sits upstairs in a bedroom, and if anything happens to her, she realised that this would probably end up in a skip, and it truly is a beautiful piece of railway modelling. So what's that to do with this? Well, what we thought we would do with it is not necessarily the club would buy it or I would buy it or whatever, but I will certainly put it in our club show, our Christmas exhibition on the 30th of December. I will gladly stand in front of this one and operate it during the show so people can see and understand Dave's true talents. So let me give you a closer look at it. The layout's actually built on two separate boards, and both boards are 4 foot long, or 122 centimetres by 18 inches deep, or 46 centimetres, and 16 inches high, which is around about 41 centimetres. Starting down the far end here, we have some kind of a goods facility on the far platform area there. Oh, and all the buildings are illuminated, bar two, as I can seem to think. So there's a goods facility down the far end, and a sort of warehouse type block. And then there's a small halt sort of end of line station where you can see my little bubble car. Working my way back along now, there's a footbridge, and even the footbridge has a light halfway along, marvellous touch there. And there's various little industries dotted along, sort of blacksmith type affairs, and all this is scratch built. A lovely bit of work here. Looking in the background there, there's sort of a row of terraced houses, and I do like the way David boarded one of them up, and he insisted that the occupant had been taken away and was in prison in the house, had become derelict. But I just like the way that he put all these little details in to make the scene work. And you've got a milkman, you've even got washing hanging on the line, pedestrians going about their business. Absolutely gorgeous. As we swing into the other side of the layout, it seems to sort of go uphill a little bit as the houses seem to rise. And the houses in the background here, the lights within the buildings don't appear to work, so we've got a little bit of work there to get those to come on. And at the far end, there's a coal merchant. There's another industry there. And then finally, there's a canal area and another warehouse. And looking down the canal, there's an old barge there that's seen better days. A fisherman going about his pastime. And then we head back down into the layout proper. Obviously you can see all the street lights are on everywhere. They all seem to work. Need a little bit of soldering, a little bit of TLC, and there is a bit of dust over the whole layout, which perhaps I'll get an airbrush and see if we can blow most of it off. But an absolutely fabulous build. It's a DCC layout, and it is just down to 2 wires, and I've lashed up my Digitrax controller. There are 7 points on the layout, and all of them have a solenoid point motor with a digital system, though I've never seen it. If you have seen this manufacture of point motors, then please let me know, because I wouldn't know how to reprogram them, because I can't find any details on them. The layout seems to work just fine, and if I bring this little bubble car into play, And now turning the lights down in the railway room itself, and you can see the lights on the layout really do bring it to life. There's such detail here. So as you can see, this is a lovely little layout that would quite easily lend itself on the exhibition circuit. But what's its playability? Well, if we look at the track plan here back in our old friend AnyRail, we have on the top left hand side, we've got these three sidings around the back, and this is a little hidden storage yard, little fiddly yard as it were. And over here on the right hand side, we have two sidings feeding the coal merchant. And then just below that is a head shunt. We've done head shunts before. And the head shunt allows then access back over to the left hand side to the small little branch line platform halt, and also the other two lines that feed into the goods area. So it's quite straightforward really, isn't it? There's sort of 9 sidings and you can move your trains around. But because of the length of the sidings, you can't have huge trains. But can that provide interest not only for the viewing public, but also the guy like me who's going to sit behind here for 6 hours? Now, one thing that I've always noticed that model railway shows, especially with smaller exhibition layouts, is the dabbling of fingers, the hand of God that keeps coming in with sticks and prodding and all the rest of it to do the uncoupling. Because uncoupling on these small, what is it, a shunting puzzle perhaps, the uncoupling is absolutely fundamental and it's got to work. So naturally, because most of my stock is KD coupled as it were, that is the shunters and the smaller sort of vans and coal truck sort of stuff, are all fitted with KD couplings. But I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are actually 3 sort of levels of KD coupling, let's say. There's the ordinary KD coupling, such as the ones I'm about to show you, with small magnets that are popped into the track. But there's also the solenoid couplings, where you actually press a button to energize the solenoid, and therefore you can uncouple without the magnet in the track. A little bit more reliable in some ways, because a passing train wouldn't necessarily uncouple, whereas with the fixed magnets that can happen. And then finally there's the pinnacle, where you operate the KD coupling on the locomotive itself, and that's done by putting a little solenoid motor in. Now, back in the summer I made a video of Bournemouth West, and here you can see their station pilot with its solenoid KD coupler. And as you can see, it does something called an uncoupled shuffle, which I'll go into later. And then there's a small string that pulls open the coupling, and the locomotive reverses out of the way. And it really is an elite way of doing your couplings for an exhibition layout. So what I shall do now is a trial fit of the KD magnets that go between the rails in certain key locations, and see if it works for the playability of the layout. And if it does, I shall glue them in place. Now, before I set about sticking the magnets in place, another fact has sprung to light, and that is the fact that this is a code 75 layout. It's got Pico code 75. They call it fine scale track. But what does code 75 mean? Well, it's actually the height of the rail is 75 thousandths of an inch. Marvellous. As opposed to my layout, which is code 100, which is 100 thousandths of an inch rail height. Well, what difference does that make? Well, it makes a difference to the KD magnets. Now, I didn't realise until I went on their website that there is a code 75 magnet and a code 100 magnet. And referring to my in-depth notes, a code 100 magnet is 2.9 millimeters thick, or 115 thousandths of an inch, and a code 75 is 2.54 millimeters, or 100 thousandths of an inch. So I can remove my code 100 magnet and concentrate on the 3 code 75 ones that I have to hand. So in your case, let's say, make sure you buy the right magnets. I went onto the website. It is reasonably straightforward. You just have to figure it out, because it's in old money. It's all in thousands. No, it's No, it's not actually, it's in millimetres and thousandths of an inch if you can still work in those scales. Right, what else do we need to do? Well, there's a couple of other things I need to point out. One is a KD coupling height gauge, and the other is a pair of pliers. Quite straightforward. All you use the pliers for is to bend the coupling hook, the magnetic hook, let's say, so that it doesn't foul the top of the magnet. And obviously there's this gauge here which gives you the height of should give you the correct height of the coupling itself, and if it's not, in the UK you're almost completely stuck, let's say, for want of a better word. And also there's a height gauge built into this. So I'll just show you this on the track and see how it looks. So here we have the height gauge in place, and if I zoom in a little bit, we can see that the height of the coupling on the gauge and that on the shunter are pretty much identical. And if I bring the shunter into the coupling, they couple up, and you can see the trip pin on the shunter is above the small flat area on the gauge. If it touches that flat piece, then you know that the trip pin is too low and you need to use some pliers to raise it up a little bit, because it will impact on the magnet on the track. Now, to glue the magnets down, I'm just going to use a very thin layer of Copydex, because Copydex, as I'm sure you're aware if you've watched the channel regularly, is very easy to scrape off and remove. So if it turns out in the fullness of time that these four magnets are in the wrong place, it won't be that difficult to move them without damaging the track. Now, I've installed a couple of magnets now, and the first one's here, and my idea is we drop one of these coal trucks onto the first siding. So we bring them along, stop it over the first magnet, and then with a little bit of luck we separate. Now, if we bring the locomotive on further, we should be able to push the coal truck further down the siding without the couplings coupling up. Leaving that coal truck on the first siding. And now we come back, change the point, the logo comes back, and if we just push, hopefully we can just push those coal trucks and hopefully it shouldn't couple. And then take our shunter back into the fiddle yard. Beautiful. Now, I mentioned earlier about the importance of the length of this head shunt. Now, the head shunt obviously goes from the end of this point to this buffer, and it measures approximately 18 inches in old money or 46 centimetres in new. So what does that limit us to do? Now, if we bring our high mech into play, which is a relatively short diesel, and we stop him right up to the buffers, he will just clear 0.1. So that is the maximum length of train that we can fit in the head shunt. Switch the point. We send him back into the goods area. and that fits in very nicely on the goods platform. And then of course, to add some variety, let's not lose sight that we have our little bubble car to bring passengers from our fictitious mainline station up into our little branch line halt. Now, I mentioned earlier something called an uncoupled shuffle that you may or may not have heard of. And it's a facility that's on certain, let's say, high-end decoders. I know that it's available on certain Zimo decoders, but I don't honestly know which ones. I'm an ESU kind of guy, and from an ESU perspective, it's available on Lock Pilot and Lock Sound decoders version 4 onwards. And on my little 08 shunter, I'll show you how it works. Now, it's worth mentioning that this 08 is a sound fitted loco, and when I press the function button to do the uncouple shuffle, the uncouple sound will function. So it comes back, I then stop it on the magnet, press F9, it runs forward, pulls back and uncouples. Marvellous. Now clearly the uncouple shuffle is a very useful function, and as I said, it can be programmed in various ways. But every loco at Chadwick is programmed in that function 9 will carry out that uncouple shuffle, so that everything is standardized across my loco fleet. Now earlier I showed you an extract from Bournemouth West, the way their station pilot does an uncouple shuffle along with the claw of the KD coupling opening. Now I had thought of doing that video myself and showing you how to do it, but I recall when I was down at McKinley I shot a video for them in which Pete did explain in intricate detail exactly how to fit those solenoids, and it's in video number 31, auto uncoupling, and hopefully there should be a link up here on how you get to it. But that video in particular is well worth a look if you would like to go down the avenue of auto uncoupling with opening a claw type arrangement on a KD coupling. And of course it's far better and more reliable than hoping that I stop the loco in the right place on the right magnet and the claws fancy opening on that particular day, because these KDs over magnets aren't that reliable. I've got away with it today by the skin of my teeth, but it's railway modelling, isn't it? These things are sent to go wrong as soon as you turn a camera on or pitch up at a model railway show. Now moving on, what needs to happen to this layout to make it, exhibition ready? Fair to say that this grey facade clearly needs sorting out, so there's some filler to go in there, and probably repaint it black and supply a curtain for it to go to drape down to the floor, because that would make it look far more tidier. The hole there is for a power cab faceplate, and I may well put a Digitrax one in there. And as you can see, it's just a little bit shabby on the front side. There's also a little bit of work to be done on the back scene. There's the join here. I'm not too sure exactly what we can do here, because joining the back scene together always is a nightmare, and there's a little bit of shuffling to be done on the back scene. I think it was at this far end and needs a little bit to be sorted out. But I mean, fundamentally, this thing, especially reliability wise, this is ready to go. Thinking about it, there might be another couple of things I need to sort out. One would be some kind of a timetable, so that there would be a sequence of events, and then every 15 minutes or so you'd be back at the start and then running another sequence. So rather than kind of sit here thinking, I know, what should I do now? I know, I'll take that coal van and put that one over here. No, what should I do? I know, I'll put it back. So you do something that's more interesting to the general public. And of course, at a model railway show, let's say you had a sequence that lasted 15 minutes. Well, very few people stay for more than 15 minutes, so they're not going to see the same thing time and time again. There we are. My rolling stock isn't necessarily suitable to this time period. I think this is more of a sort of a late 40s, 50s kind of time period, and I'm not an investor in steam locomotives, let's say, so I may have to have a scrounge around at the Model Railway Club and see if folks have anything a little bit more suitable to run on the layout. Of course, the long-term problem still exists. What do I do with it? Shall we sell it? Shall I buy it? I don't know. It's a dilemma, really. I mean, I really do like it. So whether I keep it and go to an exhibition, well, I'll see how I get on with it at our exhibition, and see if I'm an exhibition kind of guy, really. That's the only way of knowing. It will fit in my car okay. It's not too easy to carry. The boards aren't a one-man carry, as it were. You do need someone at either end. But then it was never supposed to go on the exhibition circuit. I mean, Dave, God bless him, built it in one of his bedrooms. It's quite lovely. There we go. You knew the routine. If you want to become a patron, there's the button, and please become a patron and help support the channel. It does make things so much easier for me to buy in stuff to trial on your behalf. If you're not a subscriber, there's a button for that and a video here and here. And don't forget to look up the McKinley video. Take care. Thanks a lot. See you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.